You guys probably remember the Dodge Durango RT review I did. I really liked that thing. It was loud, it was brash, and rather capable, but except for making a lot of noise, it wasn't exactly fast. I mean, there was only 360 horsepower. Basically what I'm saying is that as much as I love the Durango RT, and I really also love the SRT with 475 horsepower, they just felt like they were missing something. I don't know, something like a 710 horsepower Hellcat engine. Oh my God! Well, now I've got an even bigger grin on my face, and I'm actually going fast. So, a Dodge Durango Hellcat. It's pretty self-explanatory at this point, isn't it? After the Charger Hellcat, the Challenger Hellcat, the Jeep Grand Cherokee Trackhawk, which I reviewed on this channel, and the Ram 1500 TRX, also powered by the Hellcat engine, which I also reviewed on this channel, here's a Durango with a Hellcat engine. It just feels like Stellantis shoves that engine in pretty much anything these days. The moment that they're noticing that the sales are going down a bit, hey, let's put a big V8 engine in that thing and spice sales up again. And it's working because all the Durango Hellcats are already sold out. They'll only build them for a year. And actually, what Stellantis recently announced is that they're going to extend production of this vehicle because demand is just too high. So here's the message for environmentalists or electric car lovers. The Hellcat engine isn't going anywhere. Even if it doesn't make a lot of sense, consumers are really appreciating these things. I mean, who wouldn't? You're getting 710 horsepower out of a Dodge Durango. This is pretty much the same SUV I reviewed back when I tried the RT, except the engine is obviously a lot larger with a much more horsepower. It's a supercharged 6.2 liter Hemi V8, 710 horsepower and 650 foot-pounds of torque. However, most of its internals were modified. There's better cooling, larger brakes, adaptive Bilstein dampers. It still has the 8-speed automatic gearbox and even more drive modes and settings than its smaller brother. All of that aims at making the fastest, most vicious Dodge Durango ever built. We're talking about a 0 to 100 km/h time of 3.5 seconds out of a midsize SUV and a towing rating of 8,400 pounds. You can take on a Ford Mustang GT with this thing while you're towing a boat, while it's loaded with kids. I don't recommend you do that, but figuratively, you could take on a lot of sports cars while being a dad or a mom. It is a dream come true for any parent. Imagine doing the school run, dropping the kids off at school, and then gutting the throttle and just intoxicating, really. There's so much power, and even if the Durango is a heavy SUV, that engine can just take it in. I mean, it just downshifts, gives you a lower gear, and just pulls and pulls and pulls. It's also properly loud. I particularly like putting this thing in manual mode by pushing the transmission my way. I'll pull a paddle, I'll pull twice, 3 times, it's going fourth, why not third gear? I'm at 5,000 RPM, listen to that. And it's intoxicating because I'm in an SUV. When you're driving the Charger or the Challenger, yeah, you hear the exhaust, but in an SUV like the Durango, the sound resonates through the cabin. It really feels like you've got this ambiophonic Hellcat soundtrack surrounding you, and it just overwhelms you. It overwhelms you in the most charming way. There's nothing logical about a Durango Hellcat, and honestly, except for the engine and the amount of power this thing puts on the road, I don't really have anything to say about this SUV because the interior is just as comfortable and well put together as a standard Durango. Okay, I've got these larger sports bucket seats to hold me firmly in place when I'm hitting an apex. Although the idea of hitting an apex with a large SUV is ironic, but you can't technically do it. And when you do put this thing in track mode, it becomes a lot firmer. It hugs the ground, and it has a surprisingly German feel to the way it drives. It's a fun machine. It's got character, but it's also practical. It has one of the highest cargo spaces in the category. The rear seats are massively comfortable and loaded with neat toys and entertainment systems for the kids. Now, obviously, anything Hellcat isn't cheap. This is a $100,000 Dodge Durango. I mean, it is a ridiculous price for something built in Detroit, but there's something to love about this big guy. The fact that it has so much power, so much soul, so much sound, you'll hear it a mile away. And when you're done crooning this thing around, you put it back in auto mode. There's actually eco logos in the screen. I mean, it doesn't make sense because there's nothing eco about this SUV. You'll be lucky to get 12 liters per 100 kilometers with it. But what I'm all about is that it becomes soft. It becomes easy to live with. The suspension is compliant. It tones down. It becomes a friendly giant. It's the kind of SUV you can throw the keys to your spouse and not be afraid that he or she crashes in a ditch while bringing the kids to school. But it'll also go on a track. It'll take on sports cars at the drag strip. It's just a charming machine. So very much like the Durango RT I drove in that other video, I have what's called the performance pages on the Hellcat, but you have more options. Dodge gives you more flexibility in what you can do. There are race options. That's actually where you're gonna set your launch control system. Now, to activate launch control, like any other Dodge vehicle, you first decide at which RPM you want the vehicle to launch in. I'm going to put mine at 3,200 RPM. Then you activate it, and all you need to do at that point is hold down the brake pedal, create some brake boost, punch the accelerator pedal, and you're gone. Now, back in the SRT menu, you've got the famous drive modes. Now, this is going to allow you to alternate between auto, sport, track, snow, tow, or custom modes. I mean, again, in typical Dodge fashion, everything is pre-configured, but my personal favorite menu is the personalized configuration, where you can independently adjust different components on the vehicle. And like in other Hellcat vehicles, you've got these cool little toggle switches right here, so you can put everything in track: the steering, the suspension, the all-wheel drive system, and the transmission. Now, everything becomes in its most aggressive setting, but if you don't want that, let's say you want everything to be aggressive except for the suspension, well, you can put the suspension back in street mode. That way you'll have all the power, all the throttle response, all the aggressive transmission gear shifting, but you still have a softer ride. Now, if you don't want to fiddle with the screen, Dodge also gives you a quick SRT button to access the menu, and you also have a default launch button right here. Just hitting it will give you access to the default settings, and you'll be good to go for a good old launch control. All right, let's try a little launch with this big guy. Holy shit! Okay, it's trying to find grip, and when it does, it goes! Oh, okay, this is fast. Oh, this is a fast SUV. All right, that was the Dodge Durango Hellcat launch. I'm not becoming crazy at all. The whine of the supercharger. It has a hellish sound to it, but it's also very heartwarming. It's just soothing. It feels familiar, because there has been quite a lot of vehicles now with Hellcat engines. I've driven all of them. Every time I drive one, I wonder, what am I going to say about this vehicle? But, I mean, it just talks for itself, really. Just gun the throttle and let it sing. What an adorable beast, this thing. What an adorable thing. A useless beast, but highly adorable. Now, at this point, I'd be making a grandiose exit for the vehicle I'm reviewing, but there isn't much else to say about the Durango Hellcat then, well, it's absolutely badass and freaking cool. Now, if you're wondering why it doesn't have 717 horsepower like the rest of the Hellcat family, well, it has something to do with the exhaust system on the Durango, something to do with the exhaust manifold being a bit different, so they had to sacrifice 7 horsepower. Honestly, it doesn't really make a difference. You've got more than 700 ponies underneath the hood of a three-row midsize SUV that can also tow 8,400 pounds. Who else builds something like this except for the very expensive German brands? Nobody does this. You can take on a Porsche Cayenne Turbo with this Durango. You can take on a Bentley Bentayga. You can take on Lamborghini Urus. And you can probably beat them if you're a good enough driver. Think about that.